Nostalgia in Texas wrestling. We are looking now at a match that took place early in the 1960s, and we ask you now to search the back of your memory for the name Leo the Lion Newman. Leo is the man who was just pushed back over toward the corner by referee Irish Jack Kennedy. Now, Leo was a mixture of junior heavyweight wrestler, manager, a man who tried his best to reach the top ranks of the wrestling world. When they called him the Lion, they did so because Leo was the kind of a man who truly admired lions and often tried to emulate them. Leo is famous for having made a trip from St. Louis to New Orleans on a raft down the Mississippi River with a lion as his only companion. The referee is Irish Jack Kennedy, and Kennedy is no longer alive. He was killed by an assailant's bullet in Dallas, and he was a fine heavyweight wrestler, and he switched to refereeing after his career as a wrestler had ended. And the man who is down and rising to his feet soon, I hope, because he is a great wrestler, and this bit of the film in which Leo the Lion Newman is assaulting him without any retaliation is not typical of the career of Tony Baillargeon. Tony came from a great wrestling family. There were 7 brothers. They were all massively strong. One of his brothers could carry a horse up a ladder, and often did as a means of exhibiting his strength. But Leo the Lion Newman here, by counteracting the power of young Tony Baillargeon, who was the youngest one of the family, and probably the most dedicated wrestler, a man who had learned a great deal of wrestling skill and maintained a great deal of his speed and agility in spite of the fact that he was put through the same routine of strength exercises as his brothers by Papa Baillargeon. By Tony here is taking an inordinate amount of punishment from Leo the Lion. Leo still lives in Imperial, Missouri. He is a man who is interested in the conservation of animals and is kind to animals and supports the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. But Leo could be as wild and as cruel when he stepped into the wrestling ring as any man who ever competed. And as he pounds Tony Baillargeon down into the mat, the French-Canadian is on the rim of defeat, and if he is not able to bounce back against Leo, he is going to have his trouble. But we're just looking for the opportunity to say something nice about Tony Baillargeon, because truly he deserves it, and he is capable and has proven, and did prove over his career, because he is no longer wrestling, with the fact that he could meet any man on an even basis. But he is here trying to escape from a tenacious Leo the Lion, who has one of the qualities of being a lion and is exhibiting it, and that is the stubbornness. And there now is the first opportunity that Tony Baillargeon has had. But here is a man who is capable of outlifting Leo the Lion Newman, but it isn't always strength. It is the man who gets the jump. It is the man who is able to catch his breath quicker, and the man who is able to coordinate those muscles in a variety of ways, because the strength it takes to lift inanimate objects is not exactly the same as the strength that it takes to control somebody who is trying to knock your block off, and somebody who is changing your balance and his balance constantly during a match like this. But this will show you what happens. Well, Leo the Lion had help on the outside of the ring, and whether it's going to do him any good or not, we will never know, as Tony Baillargeon knocks their heads together. The referee at whom you are looking right now is Don Evans. Dirty Don Evans, if you will, but Don Evans for sure. And he is in there to handle a match that should be a tough one, because we've got two guys in there who in the 1950s and 1960s were extremely capable of taking care of themselves. The man refusing to shake hands is Iron Mike DiBiase, who met his death in the ring in Amarillo some years after this match took place, and whose son is wrestling today. The man he just threw through the ropes and who is bouncing right back again is Rocky Colombo. And Rocky Colombo was one of the better of the up-and-coming wrestlers in the early 1960s. Rocky, too, has passed on to the great athletic commission in the sky that handles his bookings right now. But Rocky, in his day, was the kind of a fellow who flew through the air with the greatest of disregard for his own safety and his own body, and who was as fast as Iron Mike. Iron Mike went from champion of the Navy to the national amateur championships and then into the professional ranks, and was always a tough, rugged, solid individual. Iron Mike DiBiase. When they named him Iron Mike, they knew what they were doing. But don't overlook the third man in the ring, Dirty Don Evans, who was a big factor in Texas wrestling, former Texas heavyweight champion. He lives in upstate New York right now and has a huge farm in that area, and I don't know if they still call him Dirty Don, but Don would be pleased if they did. But he was a solid customer too. But here are three men who were part and parcel of Texas wrestling at the time when the great series of films, the Texas Wrestling, were made and are still being played in some parts of the world. Now, Don Evans' presence in that ring proves that for this particular match, they needed a strong hand who was capable of moving with the wrestlers on an even basis. Colombo came to the wrestling wars in Texas about the same time that Larry Shane came here, and Larry Shane was much the same in his fast and rapid movements as Rocky Colombo is proving to be here. Rocky came from New York, and in his conversation and in his actions, he was the typical New York street tough guy. And this is the way he grew up, and this is the way he acted in the ring. There was never any subterfuge about Rocky Colombo. He would tell you what he thought, and he would do what he thought was right in that ring. And here against Iron Mike, he is trying to prove that particular point. Don Evans watching the hold closely. You can bet that Iron Mike is down there screaming something about it being a stranglehold, and Evans is looking close to make sure that it isn't. Although Evans, when he was in the ring, he earned that name, Dirty Don. So on top is Iron Mike, and I thought I noticed a lot of well, look at the difference in the count, and you'll see that Iron Mike is getting a little faster count. Somebody's objecting on the outside of the ring, and we do not have the camera on him. Now, if this was made today and I told our director, Ed Worthington, to shift the camera outside the ring, he would do it in an instant. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't have to be told. But in the days of Texas wrestling films, things were just a little bit different. They didn't have as many cameras around, but they did have fine wrestlers, and we are trying to keep their memory alive by showing you some of the action that took place. And right now, Don Evans is part of that action, and with Rocky Colombo on top, something is happening that should happen. The referee should be counting Iron Mike down, and we're going to have to leave you here with the nostalgia of never having known exactly what took place, because we have just a limited time for you to dream about the good old days of wrestling.